to the Daily Grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
Joe Rogan aside, UFC aside, hey Dana, it's time to talk about your lies. Holy flying flipping flapjacks, full-time family. We've got Drake versus Pusha T Part 2 going down in the UFC right now, and I think Dana White just got checkmated by Brendan Schaub. But Dana White brought this upon himself, similar to Drake. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't know the reference that I'm referring to when I'm talking about Drake and Pusha T, Drake sent a diss track at Pusha T, and he thought it was just going to be easy work. He thought Pusha T wasn't going to come back, and even if he did, it wasn't going to be anything to really knock him off his throne. But then Pusha T came out with his response and revealed some secrets about Drake that nobody knew in the public. For one, he had a son. He called him a deadbeat and all type of shit. And Drake's still trying to recover from that L. Now, that literally could have just happened in the UFC as Dana White opened fire on Brendan Schaub on Instagram last night on one of Israel Adesanya's posts. And when Israel Adesanya reposted a clip from Brendan Schaub's podcast, and he was talking about kickboxers coming over to the UFC. And he just said usually one-dimensional fighters coming over to the UFC isn't a good idea because the sport is too evolved. He had a great point, and he was talking about a guy that only had 2 pro fights. He wasn't even talking about Israel Adesanya. But Israel Adesanya reposted it, and because he kind of took it personal, being a kickboxer coming over to MMA. But Israel Adesanya's got a lot more pro fights. So Brendan Schaub clarified that, like, yo, bro, I'm not talking about you. You got a bright future in the sport. You're a monster. I was actually talking about Gokhan Saki. And so with that being said, that was just a misunderstanding. That was something that could have been worked out as simple as Israel Adesanya going on Brendan Schaub's show. They could have talked about this subject. None of this had to happen. None of these floodgates had to open. But this is what Brendan Schaub had to say on Instagram's post. He said this in the comments, and he went below the belt. And holy smokes, Brendan Schaub's show is called Below the Belt. Dana White went below the belt at Brendan Schaub out of nowhere in a sense. Because like I said, this all started from a misunderstanding. But Dana White said, such a fucking tool. What the fuck does this idiot know about the sport or the business? Israel Adesanya, for you to be listening to one word from this moron is a waste of your time. Guy went 6-5 in the UFC. The only thing he could teach you is how to get knocked out. Tune idiots like this out. But Dana White was not done there. Hold on, that's not it. You might think that was like, damn, Dana, holy smoke, shots fired. He's talking about Brendan Schaub's UFC record, even though he had a winning record. But he said the only thing he can teach you is how to get knocked out. And that's like I said yesterday when I covered this, before Brendan Schaub sent out this final warning. Brendan Schaub is actually a guy, if you're a fighter, you probably could look up to and get some advice from. You probably want to listen to him and get some advice, because everybody's not going to become Conor McGregor or Ronda Rousey. Everyone's not going to make enough money in their professional career to live off of. So you might want to wonder, what can you do after fighting? And Brendan Schaub's a guy that's been able to be successful in that. He's just now, he revealed actually he's going to be in a movie, but he's got 2 successful podcasts, stand-up comedy world tours and shit like that. So he's a guy that, yeah, he might have got some help from his good friend Joe Rogan, but now he can give that help to other fighters in the form of a podcast. He can talk about his experience of, yeah, man, at first I didn't know about going on stage, a feeling another fighter might have. So actually listening to Brendan Schaub, is not too bad of a thing for a fighter. He's another fellow fighter that used to fight in the UFC, and he's made his way out of the sport. But Dana White seems like he has something against Brendan Schaub. And like I said, now we might know what that is. We're going to get to that toward the end of the video. We got to take this in stride, go from how we got to point A to point B. Because like I said, in the very beginning, this was just a misunderstanding between Israel Adesanya and Brendan Schaub. And now Dana White might be looking at who knows what. But this Dana White continued, as I said. Not only did he talk about Brendan Schaub's record, he said the only thing he can teach you is how to get knocked out. But a fan continued, and the fan asked, he says, what does a guy know about the business who fought 11 times in the UFC and has become successful after his career in multiple fight-related ventures? And Dana White said, successful? As soon as Rogan stops carrying him, he will disappear. And now, that's something you can imagine Brendan Schaub took pretty personally. You're saying the only reason I'm successful in all of these ventures is because of Joe Rogan? You're pretty much taking away from everything I've worked for. You're taking everything I worked for, motherfucker. You're saying the only reason I got all of this is because Joe Rogan? Like, that's kind of fucked up. You're taking away from everything I've done. You're saying I didn't know how to fight. You're pretty much just, you know what I'm saying? Dana White, he's kind of hitting below the belt in my mind there when he says that Joe Rogan's carrying him and everything. Joe Rogan's not writing his jokes. Joe Rogan's not there filming his podcast for him. Just because he brings attention to the podcast, people have to like what they see when they get there, or else they're going to tune away. If Joe Rogan just plugged some bum on the streets podcast that's not entertaining, people probably aren't going to keep listening to it. You know what I'm saying? Brendan Schaub, he's got multiple podcasts. That takes work effort, a lot of work too. You know, a work ethic. You got to film both podcasts, write your own jokes, do the stand-up. Now you're acting. You got all of this stuff going on. Now you got a show on Showtime. Are you fucking kidding me? He's doing a lot for himself. And Joe Rogan's busy himself. It's not like he's doing all of this shit for Brendan Schaub just because he helped him get his start. Brendan Schaub took that and ran with it. So for Dana White to just kind of take away from everything that he's done, Brendan Schaub took great offense to that. But this is the thing. All Brendan Schaub saw at first, right? This is all he saw at first, was the first tweet. He didn't even know Dana White was going to go on and say that Joe Rogan comment. When Brendan Schaub saw this tweet, this is what Brendan Schaub responded with. He said, "Whoa, look who got a break from folding Rhonda's laundry to jump on Instagram. Bravo, sir. He's right, Israel Adesanya. What do I know? Listen to the bald fat guy who's never been in a fight in his life. Do that." And that's another thing. Brendan Schaub is best friends with Joe Rogan. Very good friends. One of the best minds in the sport. So even after his career as a fighter, this entire time, he's been talking MMA with one of the best minds in the sport. In public and in private. And one of the things that Brendan Schaub and Joe Rogan could have talked about, which I'm sure the conversation came up when people talked about Floyd Mayweather coming over to the UFC, is these fighters that come over here with very little MMA experience are just out of their league. You can't be 1-0 as an MMA fighter or 2-0 as an MMA fighter and come to the UFC and think you're going to become a champion. You need more MMA experience, and that's the point Brendan Schaub was trying to make, and it's a very valid point. He wasn't talking about Israel Adesanya. But either way, Brendan Schaub, that's what he had to say, and like I said in the video before Brendan Schaub sent the final warning we're about to go over, I was kind of confused. I was like, what is he talking about, taking a break from folding Ronda Rousey's laundry and jump on Instagram? I was like, I don't know if that's some sort of inside joke or what, but I don't even know why he would bring Ronda Rousey into this. That kind of confused me, but like I said then, that wasn't any of my business, so I wasn't digging too far into it. But he continued to say that Dana White's a guy that had never fought in his life. Then, that's when Brendan Schaub got wind of the second tweet or response about Joe Rogan. And that's the one that went below the belt. And that's where this last final Eskimo brother warning comes in.
Let me buy you a drink.
No, it's cool, man. I don't pay for drinks here. The bartender's my Eskimo brother. So up to you, bag. I get the usual.
What's a Eskimo brother?
Eskimo brother. When two guys had sex with the same girl, they're Eskimo brothers.
And this is where the floodgates could potentially have opened for the biggest, like, Me Too scandal of all time. And I don't know, like, the biggest star that's been involved in that so far, but I do know if Ronda Rousey came out tomorrow and said something about Dana White and motherfucking put a hashtag Me Too at the end, that would be absolutely insane. And real quick, full-time family, before you forget, make sure you hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying this video, and also if you're new, hit the subscribe button and the bell next to it so you're notified every time I upload a video. And if you want to see more videos like this, just check out the video description, the Full-Time MMA Dojo over here at patreon.com/fulltimemma, and you can see a lot of other cool things, including the goals of this channel, which is something new, so make sure you go check that out. And with that being said, enjoy the rest of the video. Now, I'm going to wait to see what happens here. Either this is going to get brushed under the rug, or this is going to turn into like a fucking wildfire. I mean, this was the final warning from Brendan Schaub. And what if Dana White responds and Brendan Schaub actually drops the bombshell? All he did here was hint. He gave a real big hint at it too, but he didn't actually come out and say Dana White and Ronda Rousey had a relationship. He just called him his Eskimo brother. Now, with that being said, this is the entire final warning where Brendan Schaub was ethering Dana White and called him his Eskimo brother at the end. And this was, like I said, in response to him saying that everything Brendan Schaub in his career was because of Joe Rogan. He tried to give everything Brendan Schaub's worked for. He tried to give all the credit to Joe Rogan. He gave Brendan Schaub no credit. So, Brendan Schaub might have felt like that was below the belt. No pun intended. This is what he had to say. This is hilarious. Yes, Joe Rogan, one of my best friends, has played a significant role in my post-fight career. No doubt. You're right about that, Dana White. 2 TV shows, sold out worldwide comedy tour, 2 successful podcasts, and just booked my first major movie. Super grateful. However, if it weren't for the Fertittas loaning your ass millions of dollars to invest into an idea that wasn't yours to start, you wouldn't be shit. How's it feel to know once the real businessmen and brains left, the UFC has been a shell of itself with you at the forefront? You've tried it all, CM Punk experiment, begging Brock to come back, and praying at night for a counter text. Tough job to do without Lorenzo holding your hand, making sure you don't mess it all up. Can't feel good. You'd be a cardio kickboxing coach in Boston in your late 40s, hoping to grab a ticket to my stand-up front row if Lorenzo Fertitta didn't save your ass. Also, this is no way Eskimo brothers should talk to one another. Last warning. And then he put at the end, Dana White, I tried to be cool. Hashtag I can do your job, but you can't do mine. Holy fuck, dog. I mean, all the stuff he had to say in there, you would think that's some shit that you said after your last warning. You're telling me you got more bombshells to drop? What could that be? I'll give you a big hint. Hint, hint, Eskimo brothers. Now, that is why I say this could be the floodgates to something crazy. Just because you guys know it's 2018 and you know the era we're in. I mean, we're seeing on a daily basis powerful men being accused of some sort of sexual, I don't want to say sexual assault, but some sort of incident, some sexual misconduct. And anytime you've got an employer potentially having a sexual relationship with one of their employees, and that's not necessarily the case here because UFC fighters are independent contractors, but either way, a lot of people already questioned Ronda Rousey's special treatment. She didn't have to do any media leading up to her last fight. I mean, and there's already rumors of a Dana White and Ronda Rousey relationship before Ronda Rousey got in the UFC. And she came out and kind of squashed those rumors in her book. But after she wrote her book, and after she got in the UFC, she dated Brendan Schaub. And coming with dating Brendan Schaub, you could imagine there might have been a little bit of pillow talk. You know, your girl will tell you some stuff that she's not going to tell the public. You know how that goes. You know some stuff about your girl that the world don't know. So whenever Brendan Schaub and Ronda Rousey were dating, Brendan Schaub, it could have came up one day, hey, what's up with those rumors, with you and Dana White? You know what I'm saying? Did that ever actually, you know what I'm saying? Was that something? And she could have just told him the truth. And so now that might be the checkmate here. That might be Drake's baby here. That's some shit that Dana White might have thought Ronda Rousey didn't tell Brendan Schaub. Or he might not have thought that she would tell anybody. She didn't put it in her book and shit like that. But now, and I, God forbid, I really don't think this is gonna happen because I'm assuming that everything that happened, if it did happen, allegedly, rumor, if it did happen between Dana White and Ronda Rousey, of course, you would hope it was consensual. There was no type of leverage situation going on there. Like, you want to be the next big star in the UFC? Because that, and I only say that, I hate to fucking bring this up, especially being such a big fan of the sport. But Brendan Schaub opened these floodgates. But that's a lot of the times you hear about these situations with guys like Harvey Weinstein and shit, right? Whether you're a director or a producer and you're like, oh, you want a part in this movie? Come on up and audition in my hotel. You come up there, he's got his fucking dick out. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of the accusations coming out. Now, Ronda Rousey was open about how she felt like the UFC was toying with her about, I feel like I'm about to get in the UFC. I'm flying around on these private planes and I'm getting spoiled by the UFC, and then they shoot my hopes down. And then it's time to come back. Oh, I'm about to get in the UFC. We're about to do it. And then they get my hopes down. That, you know what I'm saying? sounds like one of those situations. Like, yeah, you're about to be in this movie. Come on through. Come on over. Yeah, well, fuck, the movie fell through. But no, don't worry. We're going to do a movie next month. Don't worry. You know what I'm saying? Brendan Schaub opened some fucking floodgates here, and I don't think he's going to go any further unless Dana White furthers this. But I think maybe Dana White throws some subliminals here on out like Drizzy Drake. But I think as far as this is concerned, Brendan Schaub has officially won. He just pulled off the Pusha T. This was the story of Adidon. And we'll see if the media takes this any further. You know what I'm saying? If they ask Ronda Rousey about it, if they ask Dana White about it, I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But floodgates could open from here, especially with the climate that we're in. So with that being said, man, it is what it is. Let the full-time family know what you guys think in the comments about Brendan Schaub calling Dana White his Eskimo brother. Holy smokes. And before we go, shout out to all the full-time MMA white belts that have hit the subscribe button. Also, make sure you hit the bell right next to it so you get notified every time I upload a new video. And this is the hardest working MMA channel on YouTube. We provide daily updates, predictions, betting advice. We do songs. We do fantasy fights. We've interviewed Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley, Bruce Lachmedio, and Felony Charles Bennett, all in just 1 year as an MMA channel. We're one of the fastest growing MMA channels on the net, but we're still small, so make sure you guys go check out the Full-Time MMA Dojo if you want to learn how you can become a full-time MMA black belt. And while you're there, you can see where this MMA channel started from, some of the goals we have for the channel, and even more cool videos just like this one if you enjoyed it. So thanks again to all the full-time MMA white belts that have hit the subscribe button, and also if you're just lurking and this is your first time seeing a video, appreciate that as well. I'm out.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOG.